is me, NBT SKY, and so today we're gonna have some fun with the Masonic symbol. So first off, before we get started, this is not let's say not exactly traditional to Masonry, and this is not really talking about the degrees of Masonry, right? This is mostly about some of the symbolism that you can find in the Masonic symbol. Now, you see these numbers around the planets. These numbers are not according to how they're numerically lined up from the sun out, right? This is kind of based on numerology, just so we can get this clear. What else did I want you to know before we get into this? Dealing with this wheel right here. It puts Aries at the top and Pisces is kind of contrary to the regular wheel, which would put Aries at the bottom and Pisces at the top. This wheel that's sitting here is based on the Masonic alphabet in astrology. So it's not based off of the traditional wheel. So let's get into the symbolisms. First off, just for side note, the word Mason breaks down to 17 and 8. In numerology, that's in Mars. So that's just a side note. So let's look at the sun factor. And that's gonna bring us into something that's like maybe not so much common sense, but we're looking at the sun here. Now, when you talk about the sun, you talk about the beginnings and leaderships and things. And that led me to think about the conflict. There was a conflict when you read in the King James between how sun was spelled, S-O-N or S-U-N. So I decided that I was going to break down sun numerically, the S-U-N, and versus the S-O-N. So S-U-N breaks down to 1, 3, and 5, which equals 9. Versus S-O-N, which breaks down to 1, 6, 5, which is 12, which brings you into 3. So that's, if you're looking at it according to numerology, the 9 would be the Pluto, and the sun, S-O-N, would be Jupiter. But we're not going to do that. So when you get into that, then you have to think about Adam, which we got up here. And this symbol you can see in the Masonic symbol right here, right? 6 points, the atom. So anyway, we're going to get into that further, but let's just talk about Adam, A-T-O-M, which is also a conflict in the Bible or in the King James, right? A-T-O-M versus A-D-A-M, Adam. So A-T-O-M is 1, 2, 6, 4, which breaks down to 13 and 4. Is Adam, which is 1, 4, 1, 4, which breaks down to 10 and 1. And we already know you break the 10 and the 1 down, that's the sun, so on and so forth, if you're looking at it that way. Now, when you look at it a little bit further, when we talk about the atom, you're talking about on a micro level, right? So the atom is needed to create the actual sun, the physical sun, which is the S-O-N. The S-U-N, which is, is needed to sustain atom. So that was just a little interesting thing that came up when I started looking at the symbol of atom within the Masonic structure, let's say. So now let's go into the moon. The moon is a discussion of dualities, partnerships, unions. And this took place during the crucifixion of Christ. Now, me being my slow self, I sat here for like a day, like, where was the moon? Where was the moon? Where was the moon? Now, remember that during the crucifixion of Christ, the eclipse took place. So now when you're looking at the eclipse, it's said to move from left to right. So here we got the moon, sun meeting at, we'll say they met at the middle. And now back into Adam. Atom can be the atom on a micro level. It can be replicated in the 6-point star. So you got 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, which is necessary in order to, to create that atom, which brings you over here. Now, the Masonic symbol that I was looking at shows the actual lines on a compass. So when I counted it, and I looked at a couple of them, you got 3 over here, 3 over here, 6 down here, 6 down here, brings you to the 3 6s, right? And then you have F, which is what, the 6th letter in the alphabet. I had to write this down. So now that we got F being the 6th letter in the alphabet, that brings us to the Fibonacci sequence, which fits in the Masonic symbol, right? And this is like the closest number, mind you. 6 is the closest number in a number line to the sequence, as you're going to see if you tilted it to the side, and so is G. But that sequence fits in here and will go all the way out. So therefore, we got that symbol in there. Now, back to the concept of Mason equaling out or breaking down to 17 and 8, which brings you onto Mars, worry, success, power, achievement, when you're dealing with numerology. Also, the G stays in the middle. G breaks down exactly the same way to 17 and 8. Now, people also say that G is, geometry, which breaks down to 40 and 4, which brings you into Saturn, which is, the process stabilization. 8 being the closest number to resemble infinity. And of course, when you're dealing with the word God, you're dealing with infinite power information, right? So you turn the 8 to the side and you're going to get the symbol of infinity. And infinity will still fit in there from this point on. Yeah, it still fits in there. So therefore, we got infinity. Further into the G. So when you're looking into the G, G is the 7th letter in the alphabet. G being the closest shape in the alphabet to the Fibonacci sequence, which you see if kind of tilted over. So we got 7 being G being the 7th letter. We have G being the closest shape in the alphabet to the Fibonacci sequence, and you got the 7 chakras, and you have the 7 actual planets on the day of Christ's crucifixion, right? So you got 7, 1, 2, you got Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, Neptune. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, because the moon is a satellite and the sun is a star. So we got 7 point there. 7 symbol also, if we count in, we're not counting this one. So we would have to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 pyramids in the Masonic symbol itself. Now, like I was talking about the Masonic astrology or the alphabet in astrology, right? Christ's birth during the transition between Aries and Pisces, what you see. So they're saying here that the highest point for the sun and the lowest point, which is at the T, which actually goes into the cross, is where the sun dies out. So therefore, we already know that dealing with this situation, even they understand that this is a conversation of the traveling of the sun, the moons, and the planets. Period. The thing that's, like I said, what's weird is that this is still an opposite, like the earth flipped over or something. Who knows, though, right? So now let's talk about the cross. In here, which is the cross, right here. And if you put Christ on a cross, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Whether you do this on a small scale or not, because even on a small scale, it's still gonna line up to these points. So at the end of the day, there goes Christ on a cross. And so we got 5 points: 2 hands, 2 feet, and a head, 5 dimensions: sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. And then you have which is associated with the Eastern stars. And the thing that's interesting about that is that the woman carries these 5 points in a womb. So therefore, we can say that's fair. Now, talking about hold on, y'all. I'm missing something here. Something is missing. I don't know where I put it. So, got it. All right. Pyramids in the Sphinx. All right. So, when you line these pyramids up in the Sphinx, it still brings you to the cross, regardless of the fact. So, you have, 1, 2, 3, and this would. Now, when you're dealing with, in that culture, it's some stories that say that, it was used to be, to the sun move on a mass scale, because that is huge, and yet we so genius that we still can't replicate it, not even a bit. But anyway, this will also remind us that during the crucifixion, there was 2 other individuals. So regardless how you see this, you got one cross, and the middle cross, in the middle cross, and Sphinx. So you're still gonna see the 3 crucified on the day. Jesus, 2 other people crucified, or the Son crucified, with 2 other individuals, right? So we got that out the way. So let's talk about Solomon's seal. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because Mason and God comes into the 8. So it led me to say, well, they deal with Solomon. So let's look at the 8th seal of Solomon, which is interesting because Mason is 8. And when you look at the 8th seal, it speaks to a quiet courage and ambition, the first pinnacle of Mars. And quite naturally, like I told you, 8 brings you into Mars right there. So now, when we talk in a square, which is right here, separately they are 360 degrees. They still can both be divided into 4 portions and still be at 90-degree angles. If you add 700, you'll get 9. 9 does not equal the sun in numerology. Yet it confirms that SUN breaks down into the number 9, regardless. So therefore, we have to keep that. We have to keep that as important. It still leads you back to the SUN, which it breaks down into the number 9. Make sure I got it. Yeah, the SUN breaks down into the number 9. So we got that out the way. So now let's look at some of the symbols. We got the square, right? And the square is what? Stability, firmness, grounding, structure of the physical world, community, equality, because it can be broken down equally and can be used as a base and is used during building and so on and so forth, right? No. Where's the rest of the symbols? Let's look at the triangle as a symbol. The Trinity, the Godhead, wisdom, the eye of God, manifestation, enlightenment, and higher perspective, which makes sense. Even though we know a lot of times the Trinity is talked about basically in its masculine principle. The thing that's kind of funny is no matter how I cut this cake, you still have Mercury. Mercury usually I lean strictly towards the feminine principle, but it does state that it can be masculine. So we're just going to keep that as a side note, right? Now, when you're dealing with the symbol of the circle, you're dealing with perfection, the self, infinite, eternity, and timelessness, cycles, and God. So there goes the discussion of the circle within the Masonic symbol. Meanwhile, you can also see the sword, also see Pisces in here, or the fish in there. If you are drawing in there, you're still going to get that, right? We're going to get into that because all of the, even when you're dealing with a little bit of tarot, all of the main symbols that represent each element can fit within that situation right there. So now let's look at the star in general. Positively, renewal, hopes, wishes, dreams, guidance, protection. And then you got the 5 points, which lets you know Christ on the cross. So we got that. And this is the star. And Adam does look like a star. Now, the chalice, which you know is used throughout tarot and is used in Christianity and is used in other aspects, right? Speaks of redemption, honor, celebration, and openness to participate in the sacrifice of those who have died. Now, it's not saying to participate literally. Okay, so it's the openness to participate. And it does that, comma, and the sacrifice of those who have died for religious liberties. So, and then you know in tarot, that's under what? The water signs, right? So let's move right along. Who else we got? And then we have the fish, which is the age of Pisces, which is where Christ was born when he was coming out of the age of Aries and into the age of Pisces, right? Let's keep in mind the planetary lineup is 33 AD, and Christ died at age 33, and then you have 33 degrees of Masonry, which we're not getting all the way into because I'm just not. So, a little bit of tarot for you. We're looking at the planets, so I'm only going based off of the majors. So we got Saturn, which is the world, and the world clearly was affected when these planetary alignments took place, and so on and so forth. You got Jupiter, which is a wheel, and the wheel is a good fortune, good luck, and cycles also, right? And then you have Mars, and all hell broke loose according to, what the text say. All hell broke loose when this took place, right? And then you have the moon, the high priestess, which brings that higher intuition, spiritually tapped in, and so on and so forth. And then you have the sun, which represents the sun in the majors, period. Things being seen, looked upon. But obviously, the sun and the moon was definitely an important factor because you had to eat together. So therefore, you have this higher frequency altogether. Then we have Venus, which is the Empress in the majors, right? Which matches where it's lined up because Venus is directly across from the Earth. And when you're talking about the Empress, you're talking about material wealth, health, stability, growth, and so on and so forth. Then you have Neptune, which is over here, right? And that's in the 7. And you have, right? So when you're dealing with the hangman, clearly this was a discussion of a sacrifice, no matter how you look at it. It was a discussion of a sacrifice. And when